Dear viewer, welcome to today's session. My name is Thomas and I'm your host for the day, and I will guide you through the Camunda Enterprise Platform demonstration. Let's start right away. In order to start off, let me introduce you to our showcase. For today's demonstration, we will take a look on the Camunda Corporation, and Camunda simply provides a web portal for their potential customers in order to apply for some kind of internet access. So they are, as the name says, a telco corporation. So this web front end we can see right here is completely standalone and not connected somehow to Camunda at all. So of course, the customer will first of all enter some details in here in order to check the availability of the internet access. And right there, he can then choose between multiple options. So for me, for instance, I will go for the super high speed option and can simply enter all my details in here additionally. And then, of course, I can send this request out and I will receive some kind of feedback from the system that I will get, or that Camunda will get in touch with me shortly. And of course, a unique application ID is provided back to me. And this is what actually happens. So I do get a mail, as you can see right there, which tells me that the application has been, or that the request was accepted, and I can see all my details right in here as well. So everything which was entered into the form is available within the request or within the answer of Camunda as well. So that's nice to see. So by applying some kind of process automation, it is possible for the Camunda Corporation to apply some kind of straight-through processing in order to notify potential customers or applicants as fast as possible. So the process simply is way more performant and runs much faster. So now let's try to take a look on how this is actually achieved with various Camunda tools. So how do we enable you to get something similar done? Let's see. As you can see on our website, we have several products in place which can help you automating your processes. We distinguish those into three separate boxes. So usually we start off with a design phase, then we are going to automate our processes, and last but not least, we want to improve them. So we can align these tools along the BPM lifecycle. Now let me guide you through a typical application of these tools. We would start off by using Covimo. Covimo is our web modeling platform, which helps you to capture processes from a business point of view. So in this tool, the technical implementation details are actually hidden. So we rather have some kind of entry point for a business-related stakeholder in order to really focus on the flow itself. After having enabled him to design those diagrams, we move on with a modeler. And the modeler now is rather a design tool focusing on the IT developer. So in there, the IT developer focuses on enriching those diagrams in such a way that they are deployable to the workflow and decision engine. As these names already say, these two engines provide support for BPMN and DMN. BPMN and DMN, or both of these standard-based notations, are defined by an object management group. So these are not proprietary, and of course the diagrams you create within these modeling tools aren't proprietary as well. So now moving on to the automation phase, we have these different products. So as said, the engines as the backbone of the system, and on top we do have the cockpit and the task list. So the cockpit itself is rather a tool aiming for or aiming towards a so-called role, a process operator who keeps track on the life cycle of processes within those engines. So he makes sure that no incidents occur and everything runs pretty smoothly. The task list is rather an entry point for the actual clerk. For instance, taking a look on Camunda, we might need some clerk who approves several applications. So he would usually work in this kind of tool. in order to work on several tasks you might have. Last but not least, we do have this Optimize product. And Optimize aims to a business analyst as well in order to simply take a look on the data which was collected during the automation phase. So this tool offers you the possibility to actually take a more in-depth look on your processes in order to find some inefficiencies or bottlenecks, and then you would rather go once over again and enhance these within the designing phase. Having this said, I would now help you stepping through each of those products so you get a better feeling of what they actually do. So let's start off with Covimo. As mentioned before, Covimo is a web modeling platform focusing on the business analyst. So you can start off for free, sign up, and create some BPMN and DMN models right away. I do have a user account in place, so I can show you also some advanced feature sets embedded in the Enterprise Edition. Logging in, I will be forwarded to my actual organization. So right in here you can see several products stored within our Camunda consulting operation. So now let's take a look on the processes which are actually used within the Camuntelia application. Therefore, I just step into this project and I do already see currently a project simply consists out of a bunch of diagrams, DMN or BPMN. On the right side, you do have various collaborators listed. So, of course, you can restrict access rights to various people. So not everybody is an editor. For instance, I could also say that one might only have the access to comment such diagrams. But now, without any further ado, let's take a look on our customer onboarding process. So right here, we do see the process which is actually used within Camuntelia. So as you have seen, after I press on send within my rep form, I directly start off the application. And then, the process starts over. Of course, in the beginning, we need to obtain several additional information, such as the credit score. We do have an automated risk check where we do use a DMN table, and based on this, we then make a decision. So either we do have no risk at all, then we can directly process through and deliver the confirmation, or we discover a severe risk. In this case, we would then directly reject the application and send out this rejection. There is a special path, of course, which is the moderate risk. And in there, we do have this user task where a clerk would need to decide on the application. And of course, his decision then affects the end state of our process. As you can see, there are several other possibilities right here as well. So for instance, he can ask for some further documents from the applicant, or in case he is very slow, his supervisor can accelerate the decision making. One nice thing to have is that you actually can step into those called activity. As you can see right here, I can visualize myself or I can step into various hierarchies of my BPM landscape or of my process landscape. And of course, I can jump back to my parent process. Since Covimo itself is rather focusing on the business analyst, we do have a details panel right here. So there I can add some specification to activities or to the process overall, and of course there's a comment functionality. So in here I am able to comment on various activities. So for instance, on this accelerate decision making, you can see comments, and in these cases you'll be notified that some action is required right here. You maybe can imagine that in case you do work with multiple people on such diagrams, it can occur that some problems come up, and recently modified changes get overwritten, so on and so forth. Due to this, the milestone history of ours comes in handy. So this is a very easy to use miles or repository feature, which helps you to have very easy version control features in here. So for instance, when I take a look on the very old draft, which was initially created by our process owner, we can then see how this one evolved over time to the process we have just seen recently. And of course, in case somebody messes it up, we can always restore it as latest, rename it, or copy it into another project of ours. So this should give you a rough estimation or a rough idea about how you can actually model BPMN diagrams within Covimo. Besides of this, of course, we also have the feature that you can create DMN tables right away. So of course, within Covimo, you can also model very complex decision requirements diagrams. So instead of having only one decision, I could have multiple. So in this case, for instance, if you want to do some pricing calculations or decisions, this might be very good to have and comes in handy. But of course, for now, let's focus on one of these decisions. So right here, we see the risk check, which is actually used in our Camunda process. And we do see simply some input values, and dependent on those, we then make a decision. So either there isn't a risk at all, then we have none of these rules applied, there is a yellow risk or a red one. And this, the outcome of these decisions is then based on the input parameters. And that's it. So that's not very complicated. And of course, this also provides a very rudimentary milestone functionality. Having this said, I most likely introduced all of the important features from Covimo to you, and of course, afterwards there happens the transition towards the modeler. So of course, you can then download these diagrams in an exchangeable format such as XML in order to open them within other applications. After having introduced Covimo, we now move on to the modeler. And rather than sticking to web application, we now take a look on an actual desktop application. The modeler, instead of focusing on the business analysts, now is used by an IT developer in order to link the actual BPMN model to some kind of implementation. So you can see our discussed process right in here. And now, instead of having a details panel, we do have this property panel on the right side. And this property panel allows us to configure quite a lot of things. So as you can see here, we reference the delegate expressions. We also need to handle our variables in case we want to actually reference a decision table. So as you can see, we have some input and output parameters. In case we are going for a user task, we can reference some candidate groups, which are then automatically linked or coming from our LDAP system for identity access management services, so on and so forth. So all these rather technical details are edited at this stage to the diagram. So worth mentioning is that we do have a plugin called Covimo plugin. So this plugin allows you to actually synchronize diagram from Covimo and back to Covimo. So due to this, you can always have this single source of truth directly within Covimo rather than on an individual's laptop. So this comes in pretty helpful. After having then enriched these diagrams with all these technical informations, we can then deploy them to our engine. And that's where this little tool comes in. So once I clicked on deploy diagram, I can choose to go for a REST endpoint. So this should already indicate to you that you can either choose to deploy the diagrams via the modeler, or you can build your own CI/CD pipeline using the REST endpoint in order to deploy the diagram to these. Having done so, we now move on to the automation phase. After having introduced all the relevant tools for designing processes, we now move on to the automation phase. And right in there, we start off with Camunda Cockpit. As I said in the beginning, the cockpit application focuses on the business operator. So the business operator keeps track on all the things happening on these engines and makes sure that everything runs smoothly and all the process instances or decision instances can finish successfully. So let's take a look in this application. So right here, you do see the landing page for the operator. So there are various cogs in there displaying the number of running process instances, open human tasks, and most importantly, the number of open incidents. So incidents rather indicate a purely technical problem which wasn't foreseen, and these need then to be handled by someone called the operator. Below, you do see various metrics which can be relevant for operating the engine as well. Nevertheless, let's try to find our process instance for now, or the process definition we have deployed to our process. Therefore, we can simply check it out right here, and there you do see already the custom onboarding process. Taking a look on it, we are now in the runtime view. So of course we do remember that's the process diagram we have actually created, and we do see we are currently in the runtime view of it. The runtime view tells us what's actually going on within the system right now. And as you can see, there isn't much going on. So let's check out the history mode. The history mode now tells us or shows us all these instances of a well-defined time period, such as today, which have been passed through the system. So therefore, let's take a look on this one right here. So this was a process instance which has been started this morning, and we do see the audit log and the trail this instance takes or has taken. So we can definitively see which step of the process diagram, which flow node has been passed, and we would also see if some incident would have occurred. Next up, we can take a look on the variables as well. So all the variables which were important to the execution of this process instance. And there we do see, for instance, the name of the applicant. So the process operator of Camunda can now definitively see that this application was submitted by Thomas Heinrichs, so me, and I can also take a look on complex objects such as POJOs for the new application. So all these important things are stored directly within this overview. And of course, if I would be interested in how the actual decision instance looked like, I can take a look in the historic one as well. So right here, we do not see much because none of these rules were applicable since there wasn't any risk for that application. But in general, this overview gives you a bit of an indication on how this actually looks like in Camunda Cockpit. And in case you would need to do a hot deployment of a DMN table, you could do so, or you could change the DMN table directly within the cockpit application as well. But of course, this comes with a certain risk. Having this said, I would now switch back to our actual process diagram, and then I would suggest to start a new process instance running into this user task where a human or the clerk from Camunda needs to decide on this application. In order to start a new application resulting into a task for the clerk, we then once again make use of the front-end Camunda provides us. So once again, I am looking for some kind of internet access, so providing all my credentials in here. In addition, I now have this little tool down here which routes me into the yellow path. And now, in addition, I'm a bit clumsy, so I forgot the @ sign right here. And this most likely will result into a not foreseen problem. So this would then need to be handled by some process operator later on. So the front-end developers actually forgot to add the validation in this form, and due to this, I can still submit it. Got the feedback from the system that the process instance has started, and when I move over to Camunda Cockpit, refresh the page, I actually can see that there's a new running process instance waiting for the clerk to work on it. So if I take a look on the variables once again, I see, yep, that's the one we've started just now. Okay, so let's move on to the task list. As said, this would be the main entry point for the actual clerk or for a user working on user tasks within the process of yours. Task list looks a bit similar to Outlook. So on the left side, you have got various filters, which can be linked to your identity access management system. So due to this, only clerks can access their information or their tasks and not the management ones. Taking a look on all the tasks right here, we do have or should have got a new one. So as we do see here, there is a one for containing the applicant Thomas. So that's mine, perfectly fine. So on the right side of the screen, we do have such a form telling us all the relevant information a clerk needs in order to decide on this application. So he can then go on, claim this task, and work on it. Besides of this form, we also have the possibility to take a look on the history. So if another one would have used this task in order to assign somebody else, we could see it directly in here. And in addition, in terms of transparency, we also have the possibility to take a look on the overall process diagram from the perspective of a clerk, so he knows why his action is required and how he can influence the overall process. Nevertheless, let's complete this task and continue within the Camunda cockpit. For now, I choose to deny it since Thomas already has received the premium package, so this might be some kind of fraud, just to be on the safe side. One last remark to this task list. This is usually simply exchanged by our clients, since you can leverage the potential of Camunda's REST API in order to build your own task list featuring the corporate user experience you want to have in place. Having this said, let's take a look into the Camunda cockpit. I will do refresh once again, and now we actually see that the token of mine has moved down to the application rejected path. And there is also a new red sign, which indicates there's an open incident. So now this would be the typical case where a process operator needs to get active. In order to do some further research on what has happened, we now can take a look on the incidents right there. So we do have a stack trace from our application telling me that, hey, this email address does not contain a valid domain component, so there is a missing @ sign. In this case, we can resolve this issue very fast. So I only need to step into the variables, take a look onto the complex object, and there I can actually add the missing sign. So using Camunda, it is you're capable to change variables on the run in case you are a process operator. Of course, this comes in with a certain risk, but nevertheless, let's simply increment the number of retries, and hopefully this process instance runs through successfully. Worth mentioning right here, if we once again take a look on the history of this instance, we now can also see that a certain user operation has taken place, and we also can take a look on a variable log, which simply tells us or gives us an indication on all the different versions this variable have had. Great. So now I once again received this mail from Camunda telling me that unfortunately they have to inform me that the application cannot be issued. Great. So besides of these very rudimentary functionalities of handling incidents, there were more possibilities inside of the Enterprise Edition. So for instance, I could modify running process instances in case there would be a service outage. This can definitively help. Or in case I would like to migrate from previous definition version of my process diagram. All these kind of functionalities are available, and you can do way more complex operations than just showed in this small demo. Having this said, I would now continue with our dashboarding and reporting tool in order to analyze all the data queried in the cockpit. Now we have captured successfully data during the automation phase and want to visualize this in our Optimize tool. So Optimize rather now focus on the business analyst once again, who then wants to do some research on the actual processes. So let's take a look. So right here, you do see the Optimize project for our Camunda organization. And of course, several data sources are linked to this project, and I can also maintain various users and give various access rights to them. Nevertheless, let's focus on the actual dashboards. So in the folder structure of Optimize, we have a dashboard which simply contains of multiple reports. So this is simply an easy way how you then can gather your reports within one single source. So let's take a look at this one. So right here, we do see the actual dashboard for the Camunda, which might be interesting for the management, so on and so forth. First of all, we do see this KPI bar indicating how many started applications we have had in the current month. So we are far away from our goal so far, but this might change during this month. Taking a look on the heat maps below, we can see that, for instance, the left one actually visualizes the process instances, or how many process instances have passed a certain flow node within the process. So we start off, of course, with 100%, but then it results into 73% which have been issued and 26% which have been declined. Interesting to see is that the clerk actually has got a pretty high load. So basically what we do see here is that he needs to work on 50% of all the applications. On the right side, however, we do see the indication how long a certain flow node usually takes. So these are average values. And compared to the left version of the diagram, we also can see that due to the high load of our clerk, he needs an average 1 day and 15 hours to work on such application. And this is, of course, way too long. We want to achieve way more faster throughput times. So this would be a first thing we want to improve in our next iteration of our process. Down below, we can also see this document request cycle. So this one usually takes 4 days and 16 hours, but in this case, we simply do not care because we are waiting from some input of our customer. So we do not need to deliver in this case. Besides of those rather fancy heat maps, of course, there are typical data presentation formats such as bar charts, pie charts, or typical graphs. And another important thing I like to point out is this DMN evaluation count we do have down here. So taking a look on our risk check DMN table, we can actually see that 14.9% of all the requests resulting of all the DMN table evaluation resulting into a yellow risk level for the rule that a person under 30 years old who is self-employed going for the premium package will be assigned to this level. So we might want to change this, even though in telco use cases, rather young people want to get fast internet access. So this would be a first thing to change the rules in the DMN table in order to reduce the load of our actual clerk down above. So one other indication how we can prove that this is actually the case is by choosing this analysis tab. And there I can go for a so-called branch analysis. There I once again will simply check out our actual process over all its version, and then I can check how a gateway affects the actual end event of our process. On the right side, it now tells me that 23% of these process instances took the moderate risk branch, and 72% of those still continued to reach the end event application issued. Though this definitively indicates that the DMN table needs to be improved in order to reduce the load of the clerk, simply because he usually then still routes an application through this end event. For now, let me show you how easy it is to actually create such report within Optimize. So therefore, we can, of course, go for a process report for a specific process definition version or for multiple versions of this certain process definition, and then I can create it. In order to go for some kind of visualization, of course, I need to select a metric of my choice. So the flow node duration, for instance, I will group it by the flow nodes in order to choose one of these applicable visualization. So for now, let's go for the heat map. And then we can furthermore deploy or apply a lot of filters to this kind of reports. For instance, if I'm only interested in an applicant who has gone for the premium package, So this then reduces the amount of instances in the current filter by a lot. Besides of this, I can of course go for some target values. For instance, if I want to say, decide on application, this task should take no longer than 1 business day, 8 hours, and this request document should be done within, let's go with 1 week. So we might want to get a bit better there, but 1 week is totally fine since, as said, we wait for the customer to reply there. On the other hand, accelerate the decision making should take no longer than 3 hours in average. And this results into a completely different heat map from our side. Cool. Having this said, we are actually done with our little presentation about the Camunda platform stack. If you do have any further questions, do not hesitate to contact us. We are happy to help you out there. Otherwise, see you soon. Bye.